Comrades and friends, Global Weekly News, serial number 43. First, spying activities of US or the Pentagon Papers. Edward Snowden was working in IT wing of National Security Agency of US. He released the details of government spying on everybody and its allies in 2013. Julian Assange, the editor of WikiLeaks, published the war crimes of US in Iraq and Afghanistan. He got the materials leaked by Chelsea Manning, US military official. Now, 21-year-old Jack Teixeira, US Air Security Guardsman, IT expert, shared the secret Pentagon papers with his friend's Discord server group. The papers went to fourth channel also. Initially, it was believed that Russians hacked the papers, but this is not true. Jack Teixeira was arrested under US Espionage Act and being inquired. On 7th April, hundreds of secret classified Pentagon documents. Pentagon is the headquarters of US military. Pentagon documents spread in the social media. What is the content in the Pentagon papers? Let us see that. Firstly, US military's assessment on the ongoing Ukraine war is there. In this war, nobody is going to win. The papers suggest a peace settlement. Secondly, both US and UK's special forces are involved in Ukraine war. Thirdly, US spies on its allies, that is friendly countries like South Korea. US wanted South Korea to send artillery shells to Ukraine, but South Korea was reluctant, hesitant. It does not want to antagonize Russia or China since it is against its national interests. Recently, North Korea was successful in sending missiles based on solid fuel. Comrades, we are going to see next the case of Julian Assange, Australian citizen and editor of WikiLeaks. Julian Assange published the war crimes of United States in Iraq and Afghanistan. On 11th April 2019, Assange was brutally brought out of Ecuadorian embassy in London, arrested and kept in high security prison of Belmarsh near London. Without any charges, Assange is in jail for more than 4 years now. US is taking action to extradite Assange to US, that is to take him to US, frame charges under US Espionage Act and sentence him to 175 years jail term. Whether Assange can travel in a flight itself is questionable. Due to ill health, his mental condition is also not good. He may even suicide himself. Both US and UK campaign on global democracy. They conduct summits also, conferences, conventions also. They go to global south countries and speak about democracy and absence of press freedom in Russia. When Donald Trump was the president, Assange was put in jail in Belmarsh near London. Joe Biden did not change any foreign policy. International People's Assembly, a global media, is conducting a global campaign demanding the release of Assange. Assange's appeal against the extradition decision taken by the United Kingdom's Home Secretary is nearing final stage. On 11th April, demonstrations took place all over the world in various countries demanding the release of Assange. US woman Senator Rashida has written a letter to US Attorney General. She has mentioned that punishing Assange is against democracy. Some other MPs also have supported this letter. Assange's father and brother are on a tour of North America campaigning for support to release of Assange. On 11th April, 48 Australian MPs wrote a letter to Attorney General of US demanding the release of Assange. You know, Assange is an Australian citizen. So this is the response he is getting from all over the world. Let us see whether some sense prevails on US and whether let us see whether Assange gets released or not. Third, we go to Ecuador. It's a South American country. Rafael Correa was the president of South American country Ecuador from 2007 to 2017. He was a democratic socialist. He was implementing left policies. Assange was given asylum in Ecuadorian embassy in London when Rafael Correa was the president. After 2017, political crisis in Ecuador got intensified. After Rafael Correa, Lenin Moreno became the president. Lenin Moreno. Guillermo Lasso, a rightist, was elected as president in 2021 elections. This has caused a setback to the left. Guillermo Lasso is conservative former banker. Under Guillermo Lasso's rule, violence broke out in jails among several groups. There were clashes between drug trafficking groups also. Many got killed. Human rights organizations pointed out the mismanagement in jails. There are serious corruption allegations against Guillermo Lasso. Left MPs have brought an impeachment motion against Guillermo Lasso. In the midterm elections, left has won. In the context of growing left influence in Latin American countries, Ecuador is the only country supporting USA. Comrades, let us go to Brazil. Brazil is the largest country in South America. The leader of the Workers' Party, Lula da Silva, was the president of Brazil from 2003 to 2010. After 2010, Dilma Rousseff became the president. The rightist forces framed false corruption charges against Lula in 2017. Lula was disqualified from contesting elections in 2018 under Brazil's electoral law. Lula was arrested in April 2018. Supreme Court declared his imprisonment as illegal in November 2019. After 580 days in jail, Lula was released finally. After the Supreme Court judgment, Lula was allowed to contest in the presidential elections in 2022. In the second round of elections, Lula defeated Bolsonaro. On 1st January 2023, the 77-year-old Lula da Silva was sworn in as the new president. He has completed 100 days of governance. Even though Lula became the president, the rightist forces dominate the parliament. On 8th January, the rebel groups indulged in violence in Brasilia, the capital of Brazil. Lula very expertly managed the crisis. The centrist politicians also are now supporting Lula. Lula is taking many measures to find solutions for the problems of hunger, unemployment, deepening poverty, inequality, and environment crisis. Economic aid is given to low-income families. The scheme is called Familia. Even United Nations has appreciated this scheme. Bolsonaro withdrew this scheme when he was the president. Bolsonaro took away the lands of indigenous people for expansion of private mines. Lula is strengthening the environment. Deforestation activity has been stopped completely. Lula is protecting the Amazon forest. Lula is paying special attention on nutrition and health of the indigenous people. The influence of Brazil is growing internationally also. Lula da Silva, along with his senior ministers and senior officials, recently visited China. Lula met Xi Jinping, the president of China, issued a joint statement stating that Brazil and China are comprehensive strategic partners. They signed 15 agreements. They signed an agreement to launch missiles over Amazon to prevent any deforestation activity. Agreements to get 5G technology are also signed. Trade war against China started when Trump was the president of US. US was threatening countries not to have contacts with the Huawei company of China and not to purchase Chinese instruments using 5G technology. Brazil has signed an agreement with China, violating the US pressures. Brazil is importing finished goods from China and exporting raw materials to China. Brazil can manufacture light aircrafts and export to China. The agreement made with China will help industrialization of Brazil. Lula's speech at the new development bank, the BRICS Bank in Shanghai, when Dilma Rousseff, the former Brazil president, took over as the president of the new development bank, is very important, the speech of Lula. Lula said that new development bank will not be like IMF and World Bank. Lula said that instead of dollar, the countries can trade in their own currencies. Lula also said that regional commodity supply chains can be created. Comrades, now we are going to Sudan. Sudan is an African country. It is situated in a region called the Horn of Africa. A coup against the civilian rule in Sudan took place by the military in October 2021 and the civilian rule came to the end. In December 2022, negotiations started among the civilian groups and the military regarding formation of a transition government. But in the meanwhile, conflicts between the military and Rapid Support Forces, RSF, the paramilitary forces broke out. Conflict between the military and the paramilitary broke out. Many people are killed. Sudan Communist Party emphasized that civilian rule without military shall be restored. Next, we are going to see US-Philippines joint army exercises. Joint military exercises between United States, Philippines and Australia are taking place near South China Sea from 11th April to 28th April. 12,200 US military troops, 5,400 Philippines troops and 111 Australian military personnel are taking part in these joint military exercises. Some weeks before, US was allowed to establish 4 new military bases at the Philippines. Cold war between US and China is going on. US wants to isolate and curtail the growth of China. Lastly, we are going to see a very important item. It is very important for the working class. Reduction of working hours in Chile. The Chilean Chamber of Deputies on 11th April approved a bill to gradually reduce the work week from 45 to 40 hours over the course of next 5 years. The lower house of the Chilean Congress endorsed this modification to the labor code with 127 votes in favor, 14 against and 3 abstentions. The bill had already been approved in the Senate. The President is expected to sign it into law in the coming days so that it can come into force before or on May 1st, the International Workers' Day. The bill proposes to reduce the working hours per week from 45 to 44 hours in the first year after the law is adopted, then to 42 hours in the third year, and finally to 40 hours in the fifth year. It establishes increased overtime wages. Possibility of reducing working days to 4 in a week is also there. The bill was first promoted 6 years ago by legislators of the Communist Party of Chile. The majority of Latin American countries have some of the longest work weeks in the world, with countries such as Argentina, Peru, Colombia, Panama, Costa Rica and Mexico having 48-hour long week. Before Chile, only Ecuador and Venezuela had a 40-hour work week. As per Modi government's labor codes, weekly working hours may even be raised to 72 hours, that is 12 hours a day, instead of the present 8 hours a day. State governments like Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, even before the labor codes implementation was not yet notified, through amendment in the Factory Act, the state governments are exempting the corporates from many classes concerned with working hours, overtime wages, spread over time, etc. I mean, these measures are totally anti-labor. See you next week, comrades. Lal Salam.